So yeah, I just wanted to preface this video with a basic introduction and obvious disclaimer that I am still a fairly new Dead by Daylight player. I've been here for about a year with 1400 hours in the game, and the purpose of this video is solely intended for expressing my personal perspective on the game's shortcomings. I'm not stating that my knowledge is sound or 100% fact, I'm just sharing my personal experience as a new player with observations that may be interesting to more experienced players because long-running DBD players have been through a lot more historically, frustrations and changes, and they know a lot more. But I also think it's important for newer players to share their experiences coming into the game to offer up first impressions and a fresh perspective. I recently achieved a P100 ranking on Dwight Fairfield, who became my favorite survivor to play as, and I thought it would be a fun accomplishment. But through the grind and through the many hours I spent in DBD, through the events and new killers that came and went, I came to a conclusion that I understand now why experienced players sometimes take long breaks from this game. It's because it sucks! There are glaring issues more obvious that a lot of well-known DBD YouTubers regularly discuss, such as the constant buffs and nerfs of killer and survivor abilities, inconsistencies in developer decision-making, toxic players, mishandled debuts, changes, corrections, and even the live events. But ultimately, while all of these things have contributed to negative long-standing qualities, I feel there's a failure in addressing what I believe to be a huge issue with this game, and that is the current base gameplay and the misrepresentation of its genre. From the gate, my first expectations from this game, which touted the feature of infamous slasher killers, was that there would be a stronger element of horror in this. Not just the fact that we're being murdered and chased down by these killers in creepy settings, but that there would be classic levels of build-up, atmosphere, and tension. And while my earliest games had these elements, it was mostly due to new players not knowing what we were doing. We weren't aware of the overarching meta yet. We didn't know what each killer could do. There was a rightful power imbalance between survivor and killer that made every move and decision one made out of uncertainty. Once I started to learn more about the perks and killer powers, it became more of a thoughtful, informed decision on playstyle. Did I want to be stealthy, faster, more second chances, endgame assistance, boon aficionado? All of this in the end means absolutely nothing though, because the more you play, the more you realize that it's not really about experimentation as much anymore, because everyone starts playing the exact same. And when that doesn't work out, they just outright quit or they rage. Because the focus of this game really isn't about the horror aspect of it, aside from the gruesome violence, it's about the asymmetry of the 4 versus 1. The emphasis on playstyle conformity comes from these unwritten rules that the community just expects you to know, despite the game's tutorial not really providing much depth to newer players. But there is a lot they don't tell you about how to play their own game. I don't think at its current iteration that it's a very fun or comprehensive game for new players to come into. In part, I don't blame the community for these rules because the structure of this game presently requires you to play this way, as there is really only one of 3 things you can be doing in this game: working on generators, saving people off of hook, or looping the killer. It is expected of you to be doing one of these things at all times, and that's understandable, but you can see where the tedium of the game takes its toll. But worse than that, does not encourage or allow for much deviation from this formula. You may be thinking, there are still some random elements, not every match follows the same exact structure, and different maps, perks, and killers should provide ample distinction, but that's just it. They really don't. My observation has led me to the conclusion that every player, regardless of skill level, whether comp or not, has been unwittingly expected to play in an aggressive way, specifically in a way that treats the survivor as an equal or overpowered force against the killer, which changes the dynamic between killer and survivor. I wasn't here for the earliest gameplay of DBD, but I've seen the footage. That game was a completely different game. The atmosphere, the strength of the killer, the greater emphasis on hiding. It was only later that the prowess of long looping became the crutch of this gameplay and your so-called mastery of skill. To be able to loop the killer for 5 gens is an accomplishment and considered something to strive for. I myself have been guilty of falling down the YouTube rabbit hole of learning looping from very adept players, and I admit it does feel exhilarating when it works out. But my problem isn't with this style of play if that's how some people, such as comps or Swift teams, prefer to play. It's that this style of play has completely been infused with the nature of the game, rendering all other attempts at play null, along with their perks. This is something I feel the developers themselves have continued to encourage just from the numerous changes made to the game itself. For example, stealth, hiding. These things, once pointed out in the very tutorial of the game, are really not encouraged or utilized in the game. When you hide in a locker, not only do teammates not like that and may even sabotage you by pointing it out to the killer, but there are counters to hiding, such as the aura reading or killer instinct. There's really no way to hide consistently in this game. Hiding is often thought of as being a rat. Survivors don't like when teammates do it. Killers obviously don't like it because they're unable to find that last pesky little survivor. In fact, hiding was its own issue to the point of needing to change the way crows would populate just so players couldn't hide in a locker all game and AFK. But I'm not talking about hiding all game and not working towards the overall progress of escape. I'm talking about trying to be stealthy in a horror game about killers trying to track you down and kill you. Yes, we run from the killers, but what happens to other horror tropes of hiding and sneaking? And it's not that you can't do this or play this way, it's just that the game doesn't really let you due to the current fast-paced nature and growing comp expectations from even casual players. Failing to adhere to a comp level of play doesn't just risk invoking harassment from your teammates, but also results in the swift preemptive ending of yet another match. You don't have time to hide, observe your surroundings carefully to form a strategy, or even to enjoy the atmosphere long enough to really appreciate just how much work went into the sound design outside of the chase music that takes over everything. I don't blame killers or survivors for playing the way the game has evolved to be, but it's very meta and immersion breaking on both sides. And it's forced to be because the more survivors play in the same way, the more killers have to all counter in the same way, which, regardless of perks and individual powers, results in all the killers feeling pretty much the same and survivors all playing the same regardless of strategy. So for me, the nerfing and buffing of survivors and killers largely, in the end, doesn't matter because the base game is fundamentally broken, and the emphasis on fast comp style play has forced everyone to lock into a really limiting meta that doesn't support a longevity of gameplay. To fix any of this can't be done with the introduction of new killers or new perks, because the base issues are never really addressed. Limited tasks for survivors to do leads to limited limited choices in gameplay, resulting in rushing the tasks to beat the match, leading to the killers getting frustrated the generators are worked so quickly, resulting in tensions between both parties that blame the other for the shortcomings of the game, which is further compounded by comp strategies expected and perpetuated by well-known streamers and comp players in the community that to be successful in this game, you can only play in these ways to win because you can only play in these ways to win. Now, is this the case for all matches always? No, because it'll always depend on the players you end up with. And for me personally, I did play a lot with my friends. We did have plenty of fun matches, but looking back, they were fun because they did deviate from the normal structure of this game. We played with strategy, but we played in our own ways, which led us to having more variety and more fun experimenting. And because we could experiment and we weren't focused on gen rushing or looping, the killer had an opportunity to play differently too. These matches were a lot more interesting. The current comp playstyle brings with it a level of aggression and hostility that is exhausting for new and casual players to burden. Not all of us want to be forced to pull off these 5-gen loops or amazing flashlight and palette saves and to rush through each match, because if every game is played like this with little variation, the burnout is inevitable. Overall, if you don't agree with my opinion or think I'm ill-informed or blaming my declining positive experience on the wrong aspects, that's fine. As I said, I have the perspective of a new player, so my takeaways will be different. And while yes, no one is forcing you to play in these ways, they are still heavily encouraged. It results in very sweaty matches, a lot of frustrated teammates taking their anger out on players instead of the game itself. To quote my friend, a fellow former DBD player, yeah, I don't know, I liked DBD a lot. I have fun playing it, but it very much went from this game scares me but in an exciting way and I enjoy trying to hide to this game is fun but only with friends, because it feels too difficult otherwise when you can't communicate and no one is on the same page and the killer is so overwhelming. To I'm not having fun with this anymore. I'm not good at the skills the game expects other players expect of me, and it doesn't feel like a playable space for non-comp players anymore. And also, genuinely, why would I play a game when half the time after spending my limited time off on it for a few hours, it just makes me feel bad? Like, I don't want to spend my few hours getting called a stupid, worthless player by some randos online.
Meow, that's right.
As a closing note, does this mean DBD doesn't have a special place in my heart, or that I didn't derive some genuine enjoyment in what I learned from it, or the many hours I enjoyed being with my friends in the fog? Of course not. There's always dichotomy, an acknowledgement of good and bad. I love the concept and character designs, the idea of DBD rather than its current execution, and the point of this video is to hopefully resonate with others on many of the issues of this game. And though the players are symptoms of it, proponents and expediters of a toxic exacerbation, they didn't start out this way, and I doubt many of them would continue this way if they had other options. Most of them at least. There's really no easy solution or fix to all of this when the base game mechanics have nothing else to offer. Changes to powers, abilities, camping, slugging, or hooking are really just band-aids of a much larger issue. Anyway, all this, and in the end, I'm still glad I got a chance to play DBD and know Dwight Fairfield, because my friends and I had a lot of fun adding lore and life to this character and the killers during matches, and I'll never forget those magical moments with randos. I may still play from time to time, but I think it's time Dwight has moved on to other vocations. He's earned his freedom. As for the nature of this channel, as you can see, the vast majority of it was DBD gameplay. And while DBD did encourage me to make content videos again, this channel at its heart is really about the game experiences I have with my friends. And it should be about content that makes me happy. So uploads might look different on this channel in the future. But ultimately, thank you to anyone who subscribed through the months and got any laughs out of my shorts. I genuinely enjoyed making them and prefer to think of those moments in DBD instead of all the frustrating moments.